Hey, ladies and gents, welcome back. This is going to be part 4 to What If the Shield Hero Had Full Knowledge of the Kingdom, and we're gonna just get into this part. Where we left off, he pretty much went through a lot of the different things, but they happened a lot earlier than what they do in the anime. Like, he went through and the Queen showed up, he killed the Pope, and all that stuff happened before the second wave even happened. That's just because he was a lot higher level than he was already, and he did certain things earlier, such as trying to go to a different country. So, with that being said, the second wave would probably be about like a day or like a few days after that would happen. So they'd chill in the kingdom, just trying to gain some last minute levels before the second wave started, and everybody would get teleported over. They'd be defending the village for a while, and then they'd be like, okay, what the hell are the other heroes doing? They'd go try to help them, and they'd show up and they'd see this giant ship. They'd manage to get on top of this giant ship, and they'd see all of the heroes doing different things. They'd see one of them trying to fight this weird skeleton thing, one of them was trying to figure out another way to summon this weird soul thing that they're talking about. He doesn't know exactly what they're talking about because he doesn't know everything, just most. And everybody's just fighting amongst themselves. So he's like, okay. He then runs up to the skeleton, and he pretty much slams it down, and he notices something in the shadow. And he runs over, and he stabs the shadow, and he tells and he does something with the shadow, and he tells the sword hero to do the same. And then, once pretty much everything is dead, this weird soul reaper, whatever you call it, thing pops out, and they pretty easily manage to defeat it, because Nefuma's just really strong. He's just too overpowered at this point. He gains the Soul Eater shield, and they move on with their lives. And so that pretty much happens. And then this is where Glass usually shows up. So this is going to be an interesting fight because he stood literally no chance against her in the original. And this is just kind of weird because he's a hell of a lot stronger, but he also doesn't have the actual curse shield. So this fight would go a lot really similar to what her fight with Naofumi was in the original, in like when they had their second battle, when Naofumi went through like the leveling island and did that stuff. So that fight would go pretty much like that, but she wouldn't want to give up. But Naofumi wouldn't be able to kill her before the time limit is up, and she would get pulled back into the actual wave itself before the wave ended. So with that happening, they pretty much move back to where the queen is, and they're like, so what do we do now? And the queen pretty much tells them of this leveling island that is active right now, and everybody heads off in that direction to go there. So as Naofumi's boarding the boat, he meets these two people. One was a guy with bright red, like kind of everywhere hair, with like really tall hair, and this other girl. And or not offers, but the girl kind of like is like, you're like, those are some cool accessories you've made for your companions. Do you think I could pay you to make one for me? And Naofumi's like, sure, if you pay me and give me the materials, I can make it for you. And she's like, okay, and she hands him the stuff for it, and Naofumi goes off and makes some of the things. They run into them a few more times along their pretty much treks along with the things, and eventually they talk about trying to team up to take on some of the different things there. So when they arrive at the actual island, Naofumi gives her the thing, and she gives him an absolute shitload of money, which Naofumi's like, and she's like, oh, is that not enough? And she's like, give him all your money too. And he's like, what? I'm not part of this. What are you talking about? Naofumi's like, no, that's fine. Yeah, it's fine. Don't worry about it, because he's like, that's a lot of freaking money. And they pretty much go off on the island now to start their leveling. And with killing just the the most basic monsters, they're getting absolute shitloads of experience. But they quickly realize that after killing a bunch of these things, the XP gained from them quickly diminishes, and he's trying to figure out why. And then he starts seeing the other heroes around, and is like, oh yeah, we're like, the shield or the heroes, like when they're together, they don't gain as much experience because they're not supposed to like work together in terms of like leveling up and getting stronger. They're supposed to be separate for that part, but then they're supposed to work together for some final boss, I'm pretty sure is how it's going to work, but I don't know exactly. So they pretty much separate because Naofumi isn't the kind of guy to be like, I'm fighting for this area and I want to be here. He's like, nope, I'm leaving. We're going to a different part of the island. They leave, and it's pretty much nighttime now, and they hear rustling in the woods. They set up a camp already, and they're just pretty much chilling, and they're probably thinking of doing some nighttime farming, but they're still debating it. So those other two from the boat show up, and they're like, we finally found you guys. What are you doing out here? And Nothing's like, oh, we were going to do some late night grinding for some levels. And he's like, oh, come on. You could just do that tomorrow. We've only been here for a day. Come back with us. And Nothing's like, okay, sure. How exactly did you find us exactly? And he's like, that's a story for another time. For now, let's just go back to the back to the island, main island. And he's like, okay, whatever. Sure, why not? So they go back. And the next morning, they go and they gain some levels together where finally they are pretty much convinced that this guy actually is the shield hero and he's not just making some bullshit up. So, after gaining some levels, again, Naofumi is really strong. Like, for the second wave, he was as strong as he was at the end of the third wave, so it's kind of like, he's strong. He's just really strong in general. So after a while, Naofumi would be looking at the stats that he and his pretty much teammates are on, and he would notice that they aren't gaining levels anymore. And he doesn't know if people can get another class upgrade, so they go back and to the main island and check it. Because they figured out that they can, Naofumi would know that he can pretty much fast travel / like teleport to places he's already been. So he would go there, and he'd go to the Four Heroes Church, which is the new religion now, and he would ask if he can get another class upgrade. And they would tell him that he can, but it would be a heftier price than before, just because you already did it once. I don't know exactly how it works, because they don't manage to get high enough level where they could class upgrade again in the original, so I don't know exactly how it would work, but I'm just going to say they get to that point. I'm going to say they get to like level like probably like 100 to like 150 or something like that, and then they have to class upgrade again in order to go any higher. So they end up getting their class upgrades, and Naofumi is like looking at his wallet right now, and he's like, even with the money they gave me for making that accessory for them, this is quite a bit of money. And now Naofumi goes back, and he continues on with his grinding, and he finds this weird underwater temple dungeon looking thing, and he goes down there, and he sees another dragon's hourglass, and he looks at it, and he sees that it's only 24 hours away. He teleports back to the queen quickly and pretty much tells her, he's like, yeah, there's another dragon hourglass and the waves are going to be coming over that island, like, really quickly, really soon. And she's like, okay. And they gather up all the different, pretty much, materials and pretty much weapons and people, pretty much, to begin to fight this wave. And they go back, pretty much, to where that wave is supposed to be, and they realize it's most likely going to be on water and that this is going to be really annoying for them to deal with. The wave begins, and they start pretty much fighting the different giant things. And once the big boy water guy comes out, Naofumi and some of the other heroes are pretty much trying to get it out of the water. So Naofumi goes on Philo, and he pretty much gets the thing out of the water, but the heroes can't really do any damage to it. So this is where he tells Raftalia, he's like, you come help me do this, because I'm pretty sure you're stronger than the rest of the heroes at this point. So Raftalia jumps up, and she is, like, way outclassing all of the other heroes there. Obviously not Naofumi, because Naofumi is pretty much just as strong as she is. And she actually manages to take down this giant beast thing before the other, pretty much, otherworldly heroes show up. So Naofumi is pretty much like, oh, it's Mr. Red Hair. He sees him on another boat. And he's just like, you just missed it. We were helping him fight. And he's just like, oh, whatever. So now Fumi jumps down onto the actual, pretty much, giant beast. And he starts trying to see if it has any drops. And he thinks that the red-haired guy's doing the same. And he's just like, hey, what are you doing? You didn't really help kill it. That was me and Raftalia's doing. The other heroes also jump down. And they're like, well, we want some of the loot too, basically. So they try looking for any loot that's there. And this is where the red-haired guy is just like, we're gonna have to fight now. And Naofumi looks up and he's like, "What?" All they hear, and he pretty, or the red-haired guy pretty easily manages to dispatch all of the heroes except for Naofumi, and he then challenged Naofumi, Raftalia, and Philo to a fight. And it's kind of odd because it is really easy for them to actually manage to win this fight. Raftalia, again, is pretty much, she's like, probably like 2 times to 3 times as strong, and so is everybody else as their original counterparts. So they actually pretty easily are managing to take them down. This is where Glass shows up once again, and it's a 3-on-3 fight now. And it's actually going heavily in Naofumi and everybody else's favor, and they can't, or the other teams can't, or not other teams, but the otherworldly heroes can't actually really do anything. But this is where Naofumi starts gaining the knowledge that these people are fighting for their own world, and that in order for Naofumi to actually be able to defeat them, he has to make a decision: fight for the world or fight for the people. And before he can make this decision, the wave count, or like the minute of the counter, is actually over, and they get sucked into the portal, and they're pretty much just like, yeah, we'll see you again, but for now we'll leave. And that's where I'm going to leave this part off, because that's pretty much where the actual waves end. Well, actually, not really, because Naofumi still would go, and he would buy the, or not buy, but he would gain the, what even is that town called? I don't remember exactly what the town is called, but where Raftalia was like, where she grew up and did things like that with, like where the grave of her mother and father was, where they like jumped off the, or where they like threw her off a cliff by the first wave happening. So that's where they would end up going. And after pretty much going there, she would realize that he is now the lord of this place and that they're going to rebuild it and make it their base of operations. This is where Naofumi realizes that he's fighting for the people and not the world itself, or maybe he's even fighting for both. He doesn't quite understand just yet, but he pretty much tells Raftalia that he's going to stay there. And they're about to kiss, but everybody pretty much pops out and it gets cut short. So that's where we're actually going to leave this part off. So I'll see you guys if, or in the next actual What If I'm going to do, and maybe I'll cover this again if, or when the Shield Hero anime continues, but I'm not sure. So I'll see you guys in the next part. Peace out. Bye.